Jeff Berding has been a city council member since 2005. Mr. Berding works as Director of Sales and Public Affairs for the Cincinnati Bengals and was formerly an aide to Senator John Glenn and Congressman David Mann and a volunteer for the Cincinnati Regional Chamber. Mr. Berding holds an MBA from Xavier University and lives in Linwood. Welcome.
Joined here by my daughter, Allie, one of my three kids. My wife and I are living in Linwood, raising three children, and I can tell you my political philosophy is pretty simple. What comes before us is likely to make the city better, and more likely that Allie and her siblings are going to raise their kids someday in Cincinnati, I'll probably be for it. And if I think it makes the city less, and maybe it's short-term politically good for me, but bad for Allie and kids and grandkids just like her, then I'm probably going to be against it. I can offer I'm not too interested in the politics of City Hall. I'm more interested in the results. In my 4 years on council, I think I've had some good results to show. I authored the chronic nuisance ordinance that holds landlords accountable for the behavior at their properties. Chaired the ambulance task force to make sure that we have enough ambulances to answer your call for 911 and transform the way we deliver that service. Started with David Pepper, a Keep Your Home campaign. 1,500 people have kept their homes out of foreclosure once they receive the notices through counseling. In addition, work with Chris Bortz and Councilmember Qualls on the Go Cincinnati plan, which is an economic growth strategy that really is the long-term answer to our deficit problem. And then, of course, in the area of public safety, working with my colleague and friend John Cranley to add more police officers to the streets of the city, and then recently opposing layoffs as one of the council members who is not willing to balance the budget by reducing our police presence and jeopardizing public safety. In the area of neighborhood revitalization, I agree with Mr. Bortz. It starts with public safety. If people feel safe in the city, they're more likely to live in the city. And when people don't feel safe, they're likely to take their families, if they can, into neighborhoods where they feel safer. I'm a big supporter of collaboration with the Port Authority. I helped author the legislation to have the port get more authority, worked with David Pepper and the mayor to have the 10 new board members appointed, and we need them to be more proactive in terms of bringing businesses into our neighborhoods, implementing Go Cincinnati, and providing the jobs to our people. With 10% unemployment, it's critical. We also need those tax revenues that come from the jobs to really fill the city's coffers to provide all the services that we want. I'm a supporter of the casino plan. That $20 million a year really can help neighborhood development. Back after the last one failed in November, I went to Columbus and met with people in Columbus and Cleveland to make sure that Cincinnati was included in this plan. And then actually, once Cincinnati was included and they were looking at suburban sites, said, no, if you want the political support, it needs to be in the city and it needs to be at Broadway Commons. That'll be a great boost to our neighborhoods in the city. I continue to work for a solution on the full-time housing court so that we can have one-stop shop, one judge dealing with all of our neighborhood issues. We've had a lot of hurdles unique to Cincinnati because of the reforms that have municipal court judges by districts, but we're going to make that happen hopefully in common pleas. And then, of course, we do need to implement a jobs plan. Ask for your support. Again, my name is Jeff Berding. I've been an independent voice. You may not always agree with me, but I'm going to do what's right by the people over politics. Thank you.
Mr. Berding, please give us your opinion on the streetcar project.
I think it's an exciting project. I think the economic development benefits are real. I have the opportunity through my private sector job to travel around to other cities and see streetcar programs. And I think the development that you see along the routes of a streetcar are enormous. Spent some time today and over the Rhine, and just the architecture that you see down there, you can see how it really would spur investment in some of these great historic buildings. I think the question is how do we pay for it? And obviously with the $51 million operating deficit next year, it's not going to be paid for out of the general fund. I think that the key to it is winning the federal government lottery. The federal government's going to use federal tax dollars, money that we send to Washington, to build 5 systems in 5 new cities, and we need to be one of those 5, and I support the work of the city manager and the mayor to make sure that Cincinnati is one of those 5. And then I think through tax increment financing along the route, the people that are benefiting the most from the investment, I think, could pay a little bit more through their property taxes, capture that revenue to pay off the bonds. I hope we can make it happen.
Mr. Berding, affordable housing is a hot button for many of the neighborhoods, yet the programs with rental subsidies are at capacity with long waiting lists, and the only housing many Cincinnati families and seniors can afford is unsafe and substandard. What can the city do to increase the amount of good, affordable housing for its residents?
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to see is we would finally get this full-time housing and environmental court, because I think that judge would have a better platform to raise the standard of living in a lot of the housing that is substandard by having one judge that makes sure that building codes are enforced, health codes are enforced, et cetera. In addition, I think that we are doing some good things with the city in terms of our tax abatement policy, our lead tax abatement, first in the country here in Cincinnati, Councilmember Cole's initiative with Councilmember Boards. I think we obviously have to do a better job in terms of some of our collaboration with private developers, with some of our tax dollars that we get through, pass through the city. But I think the biggest thing is again, to do a better job in terms of public safety, in terms of code enforcement. I think our chronic nuisance ordinance is a key step in that direction as well. We have housing out there, but as you said, too much of it is dangerous and substandard, and people aren't drawn to it. We need to do a better job in sticking up for those people.
Mr. Berding, you recently proposed a motion before City Council to reimburse a Westwood neighborhood group for the plywood they used to board up a vacant home, $98. I was just wondering, generally speaking, are you worried that that could set a precedent for other neighborhood groups taking illegal action?
Well, let's be clear. The building had been condemned, and the neighborhood was waiting and waiting and waiting for the city to get around to acting based on that condemnation. And I think it starts a good discussion. Look, in a $51 million deficit, I think we should be doing all we can, just like those citizens on patrol outside, to get citizens helping us to provide services. And so if we can get citizens to step up and say, hey, look, that condemned building that's been on my street forever, that's a real impediment to making this vibrant, we'll board it up for you, city. You've condemned it. Just build us, provide the wood for us, or reimburse us for the wood, and we'll do it. And we'll get the prostitutes out, and we'll get the drug dealers out, and that'll make the neighborhood better for everybody. Look, I think we should welcome volunteers to the effort. And what they did was unorthodox. I grant you that. They did alert the city. They didn't do it in the quiet of the night. They said, city, here we're coming. We're going to board it up since you can't do it. And I do think in terms of the biggest impediment, I think one of them is a very poor job on the part of our administration to provide the services in our neighborhoods. And because we have a city manager system, that administration is not accountable to you, the voters.
All right, Mr. Berding, you mentioned that you are a supporter of the casino plan. A few weeks ago, Governor Strickland announced that if voters do not approve this plan, if the revenue does not come in from Ohio slots, then funding from the Ohio district schools will suffer in a result of that. The report released from the government's office actually said that $37.9 million will be lost in Cincinnati public school funding. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I've known Governor Strickland since before he was a congressman in 1990 when I was working for Attorney General Celebrezzi, so I have high regard for our governor. I think that the plan that you're referring to was the governor's plan that was passed by the General Assembly that provided for slot machines at racetracks, which is now going to go before the voters and has resulted in the financial consequences that you just spoke to. Clearly, in the meantime, though, the voters are going to have an opportunity to vote for casinos this year. I don't know that the governor's taken a position on this particular issue, but again, I believe that voters should have this opportunity. I think citizens decide when they get in their car and drive to Indiana or West Virginia or other states around Ohio, and they take their tax dollars with them. I think the worst thing would be for Northern Kentucky to have casinos, for all of our people to spend their dollars in Northern Kentucky and just bring their problems back to this side of the river. I'd like to see the revenue here. I'd like to see the revenue spent at Broadway Commons and use some of those tax dollars for economic development in our neighborhoods, also potentially for schools, but then certainly be able to help people who have gambling problems. When I first ran for city council, I said my top priority was making the city safer and reducing crime. So this summer, when the mayor and members of my party proposed laying off 138 police officers, I said no. I said no because firing 138 police officers would make the city less safe. And having a less safe city means less people want to live here, less jobs want to locate here, less tax revenue will come in, we will have bigger deficits. And so I thought it was short-sighted as a way to solve the deficit. Fortunately, at the end of